Wargames, evaluating the strategic milestones of the US and China in a hypothetical conflict.
Introduction.
The strategic dynamics between the United States, US, and China are increasingly scrutinized in light of a potential military conflict, particularly concerning Taiwan. As tensions rise, military and think tank organizations have engaged in various wargames to simulate different conflict scenarios. These wargames aim to evaluate military capabilities, assess risks, and analyze political implications of a hypothetical US-China confrontation. This report synthesizes insights from multiple wargaming exercises focusing on military outcomes, political ramifications, and the limitations of current methodologies in these simulations. Potential outcomes and military challenges. Numerous wargames conducted by organizations such as the Center for Strategic and International Studies (CSIS) and the RAND Corporation underscore the potentially devastating consequences of a direct conflict between the US and China. For instance, a CSIS simulation projected significant losses for the US, estimating the loss of 200 aircraft and 20 warships alongside 2 aircraft carriers. These projections highlight the immense destruction that could accompany a military confrontation. Wargames also reveal the evolving nature of warfare, where cyber and space capabilities play crucial roles. Cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure and space assets have become commonplace in these simulations, emphasizing the need for both nations to prepare for multifaceted warfare that extends beyond traditional military engagements. The implications of such warfare can alter the strategic calculus, potentially leading to escalatory cycles that could spiral out of control.
Political implications.
While military outcomes are a focal point, the political ramifications of these wargames cannot be overlooked. Analysts including Timothy R. Heath from Lawfare have noted that many wargames inadequately address the complex political terrain surrounding military decisions. Issues of deterrence, escalation control, and alliance dynamics are critical components of any military conflict scenario.
For example, during some wargames,
participants debated the merits of prepositioning US forces in Taiwan, a decision fraught with political implications. Such discussions highlight the delicate balance between demonstrating resolve and avoiding provocations that could escalate tensions. The interaction of military and political factors in these wargames exposes the intricate web of relationships and motivations that define US-China interactions.
Historical context and realism in scenarios.
A significant critique of wargames is their reliance on peacetime assumptions, which can lead to unrealistic scenarios. Heath argues for the importance of incorporating historical wartime experiences into scenario modeling. This approach acknowledges that great power conflicts often involve multiple nations and complex motivations that extend beyond singular issues like Taiwan.
The tendency to simplify scenarios to focus solely on US-China dynamics neglects the broader geopolitical landscape.
The historical experiences of great power wars indicate that conflicts typically involve multifaceted motivations and complex alliances.
For example,
the US and China may not engage in military action solely due to Taiwan. Instead, the conflict could stem from a combination of regional and global factors, including economic competition, territorial disputes, and ideological differences.
Common key points.
1. Military and political outcomes. Both military and political dimensions are crucial for understanding a potential US-China conflict. 2. Destructive potential. The projected military losses underscore the alarming potential for devastation if conflict arises. 3. Need for comprehensive wargames. There is a consensus on the necessity for wargames to integrate political analysis alongside military simulations. For a realistic scenario development, creating scenarios that reflect wartime dynamics rather than peacetime assumptions is essential for accurate analysis.
Differences between sources. The perspectives of various sources reveal distinct emphases.
Source 1 CSIS focuses on the geopolitical context and implications of US-China rivalry, particularly in space,
emphasizing ongoing tensions that could lead to conflict.
Source 2 Lawfare critiques the methodologies of wargames, advocating for a clear distinction between military and political analyses and promoting the use of historical models for scenario development. Source 3 CSIS primarily discusses specific wargames and outcomes, concentrating on tactical and operational lessons learned without delving deeply into political implications.
Timeline of events.
Recent years, heightened tensions between the US and China have prompted an increase in wargames simulating potential conflict scenarios. 2022 to 2023, multiple organizations including CSIS and RAND conducted wargames revealing alarming projections regarding military losses and vulnerabilities. Ongoing discussions, analysts are engaged in continuous dialogue about conflict prevention, escalation control, and alliance management, recognizing the complexities of military and political decision-making.
Conclusion.
Wargames serve as valuable tools for exploring the potential military outcomes of a US-China conflict, particularly regarding Taiwan.
However,
they also reveal significant limitations in addressing the political dimensions critical for effective deterrence and escalation management. A more nuanced understanding of historical contexts and a broader geopolitical perspective are essential for developing robust strategies to navigate the complex dynamics of US-China relations. As tensions continue to evolve, the insights gleaned from these simulations will play a vital role in shaping future policy decisions and military preparedness.
References. 1. CIGI.
2022, Wargames offer partial picture of a future China-US clash over Taiwan. Retrieved from https://www.sigaimonline.org/articles/war-games-offer-partial-picture-of-a-clash-over-Taiwan.
2. Heath T. R. 2023.
Wargames can't tell us how to deter a Chinese attack on Taiwan, but different games might.
Lawfare.
Retrieved from https://www.lawfare-media.org/article/wargames-can't-tell-us-how-deter-Chinese-attack-Taiwan-different-games-might.
3. CSIS. 2023, First Battle. Next War, Wargaming the Chinese Invasion of Taiwan.
Retrieved from https://www.csis.org/analysis/first-battle-next-war-wargaming-Chinese-invasion-Taiwan. The content presents an in-depth analysis of wargames simulating potential US-China conflicts, particularly concerning Taiwan. It highlights several counterintuitive aspects that challenge common perceptions about military strategy and the implications of such hypothetical scenarios. 1. Destruction versus victory. One counterintuitive finding is that despite the focus on military outcomes, the wargames indicate that a conflict would likely result in devastating losses for both sides, potentially making victory irrelevant. The simulations reveal that the US could suffer heavy losses, including hundreds of aircraft and significant naval assets. Which raises the question of what winning truly means in a scenario where both sides endure catastrophic damage. 2. Political dynamics underestimated. The findings suggest that wargames often emphasize military outcomes while neglecting the intricate political dynamics that could govern a conflict. This suggests that military planners may not fully grasp the broader implications of their strategies. For instance, the debate over prepositioning troops in Taiwan highlights the tension between deterrence and provocation, which is a political consideration that could overshadow military tactics. 3. Peacetime assumptions in wartime scenarios. Many wargames operate under peacetime assumptions, which can lead to unrealistic scenarios that do not account for the complexities of wartime decision-making. This reliance on current political dynamics can distort the nature of potential conflicts, as it fails to recognize that wartime incentives and motivations are likely to differ significantly from those in peacetime. 4. Historical context ignored. The critique that wargames often lack historical context is particularly striking. The suggestion that wargames should incorporate lessons from past conflicts rather than extrapolating from contemporary relations challenges the notion that current geopolitical tensions can be fully understood without considering historical precedents. This implies that military strategists may be ill-prepared to navigate the complexities of a new conflict. 5. Multilateral nature of conflict. The assumption that a US-China war would primarily involve only the two nations is overly simplistic. Historical patterns suggest that great power conflicts often involve multiple nations and complex alliances. This counterintuitive realization underscores the need for wargames to model broader international dynamics rather than focusing solely on bilateral relations. 6. Misunderstanding of war initiation. The idea that conflicts are typically initiated solely over specific issues, such as Taiwan's status, underestimates the multifaceted nature of great power rivalries. It challenges the notion that a war would be confined to a singular issue, suggesting instead that various political, economic, and military factors would converge to create a volatile situation similar to historical precedents. 7. Complexity of deterrence. The wargames reveal that deterrence strategies are not straightforward, and the interplay of military capabilities and political decisions complicates the landscape. The notion that military strength alone can deter aggression is countered by the reality that political perceptions, alliances, and historical grievances also play critical roles in shaping outcomes. 8. Potential for escalation. The games illustrate that even minor military engagements could rapidly escalate into broader conflicts, especially given the interconnectedness of global politics. This challenges the perception that conflicts can be easily contained and highlights the dangers of underestimating escalation risks. 9. Assumptions about allies. The assumption that allies such as Japan would remain passive or limited in their involvement during a US-China conflict may be misguided. Historical examples suggest that nations often reassess their strategic interests in light of emerging threats, which could lead to unexpected alignments and escalations. 10. Credibility of scenarios. The reliance on hypothetical scenarios that mirror current peacetime relations may lead to a lack of credibility in wargame outcomes. This counterintuitive realization posits that scenarios must be designed to reflect the chaotic and unpredictable nature of war rather than relying on stable peacetime conditions. In conclusion, the analysis reveals critical counterintuitive insights regarding the nature of military strategy, political dynamics, and the assumptions underpinning wargames. These factors emphasize the complexities and unpredictabilities inherent in potential US-China conflicts, suggesting that a nuanced understanding grounded in historical context and multilateral dynamics is essential for effective strategic planning. The report on wargames, evaluating the strategic milestones of the US and China in a hypothetical conflict, reveals several critical insights that many may overlook, particularly in the realm of political implications and the assumptions underlying military wargames. Here are the significant overlooked points and their importance. 1. Distinction between military and political analysis. One of the most significant insights is the distinction between military and political analyses in wargames. Many participants and analysts tend to conflate the two, assuming that military outcomes naturally translate to political ones. However, Timothy R. Heath emphasizes that military wargames often fail to capture the complexities of political decision-making, which involves a broader array of factors including economic and diplomatic considerations. This distinction is crucial because military strategies do not always align with political realities, particularly in a high-stakes conflict. Significance: misunderstanding this distinction can lead to poor strategic decisions. For example, a military victory in a wargame may be interpreted as a justification for political actions that could escalate tensions or provoke a conflict. Without a clear understanding of how military outcomes interact with political ramifications, leaders may find themselves in unanticipated conflicts. 2. Historical context in scenario modeling. The reliance on peacetime assumptions when modeling wargames is another critical point that is often overlooked. Many wargames draw scenarios from current relations,
neglecting the complexities and motivations that could emerge in a wartime context.
Heath argues for the necessity of modeling scenarios based on historical wartime experiences rather than extrapolating from current dynamics. Significance: this historical perspective is essential for understanding the multifaceted nature of great power conflicts. War is not just about the immediate issues at hand like Taiwan but also involves broader geopolitical considerations including alliances and historical grievances. Ignoring this can lead to oversimplified views that may misguide policymakers. 3. Expectations of conflict scale and duration. Another significant aspect is the common assumption that any conflict would primarily center around Taiwan and be a limited engagement. The report suggests that based on historical precedents, a U.S.-China conflict would likely involve multiple nations and could escalate beyond regional boundaries. Significance: this lack of foresight could lead to complacency in preparing for broader conflicts. If policymakers assume a localized conflict, they may not allocate resources effectively or build necessary coalitions in advance. The historical context indicates that great power wars often have unpredictable escalatory dynamics that can involve numerous participants. 4. Political decision-making complexity. The report highlights the complexity and difficulty of political decision-making in wartime, which is often underestimated in wargames. Decisions regarding initiation, escalation, and alliances are not merely tactical but involve deep political calculations that require understanding motivations, risks, and potential fallout. Significance: the lack of robust political modeling in wargames can lead to a failure in anticipating the reactions of allies and adversaries. Understanding that political calculus changes in a crisis can help in crafting better deterrence strategies and managing international relations effectively. 5. Assumptions about states' motivations. An often overlooked point is the simplistic portrayal of state motivations in wargames. The assumption that China would act solely out of a desire to reclaim Taiwan ignores the complex interplay of motivations that drive state behavior. Significance: such assumptions can lead to misleading conclusions about how conflicts may unfold. If analysts believe that China's motivations are purely territorial, they may underestimate the broader implications of its actions, including its pursuit of regional hegemony or responses to perceived threats from the U.S. 6. The role of alliances. Wargames often simplify the role of alliances, focusing primarily on U.S.-China dynamics while neglecting the potential responses and roles of other nations, particularly Japan and Southeast Asian countries. The expectation that regional allies would remain uninvolved or minimally engaged is rooted in current peacetime dynamics, which may not hold true during a crisis. Significance: this oversight could lead to strategic miscalculations about the level of support the U.S. could expect from its allies in a conflict. Understanding how alliances might shift in response to aggression is crucial for effective military planning and diplomatic efforts. 7. Cyber and space warfare. The simulations often highlight the critical role of cyber and space capabilities but may not delve deeply into their implications for both military and political outcomes. The increasing reliance on technology in warfare signifies a shift in how conflicts could be waged. Yet the strategic implications of these new domains are often underexplored. Significance: cyber and space warfare introduce new layers of complexity in deterrence and conflict. The consequences of cyber attacks on civilian infrastructure, for instance, can lead to political repercussions that extend beyond traditional military responses, potentially destabilizing international relations. Conclusion: the report underscores that while wargames provide valuable insights into military strategies and potential outcomes, their limitations must be recognized. The importance of integrating political analysis, historical context, and the complexities of international relations into wargame scenarios cannot be overstated. Failure to do so risks oversimplifying the intricacies of great power conflicts, potentially leading to flawed strategic decisions that could have dire consequences in real-world scenarios. As tensions between the U.S. and China continue to evolve,
A nuanced understanding of these dynamics will be crucial for policymakers and military strategists alike. 1. Potential military outcomes and destructive costs.
Wargames conducted by various organizations have projected alarming military outcomes in the event of a US-China conflict, particularly over Taiwan. For instance, simulations from the Center for Strategic and International Studies (CSIS) indicate that the US could face significant losses, including the destruction of 200 aircraft and 20 warships. This highlights the severity of the military challenges both nations would encounter, emphasizing the high destructive potential of such a conflict. Additionally, these simulations often include cyber and space warfare components, underlining the evolving nature of modern military engagements and the multifaceted threats that would emerge in a hypothetical conflict scenario.
2. Political implications and the need for political analysis.
While military dimensions are crucial, the political implications of a US-China conflict are equally significant. Wargames often struggle to address the complex political dynamics involved, such as deterrence, escalation management, and alliance commitments. Timothy R. Heath points out that the information requirements for political analysis differ substantially from those needed for military assessments. The debates around the prepositioning of forces in Taiwan illustrate the political sensitivities that can influence military decisions. This underscores the necessity for wargames to integrate political considerations more effectively to inform strategy and prevent escalation in a potential conflict. 3. Critique of realism in wargame scenarios. A recurring criticism of wargame methodologies is their reliance on peacetime assumptions, which can lead to unrealistic depictions of conflict scenarios. Analysts argue that scenarios should be modeled on historical wartime experiences rather than extrapolating from current peacetime dynamics. This approach would enhance the realism of simulations and provide a more accurate representation of the motivations and actions of nations in a wartime context. Recognizing that great power conflicts often involve multiple nations and complex motivations beyond a single issue like Taiwan can lead to a more nuanced understanding of the geopolitical landscape. 4. Interconnectedness of military and political factors. The interplay between military and political decisions is critical in understanding the dynamics of a potential US-China conflict. While wargames can effectively simulate military engagements, the outcomes often prompt deeper political questions regarding conflict initiation, deterrence strategies,
and alliance dynamics.
The historical context of past great power wars suggests that the causes of conflict are multifaceted and cannot be reduced to single issues. Therefore, wargames should strive to reflect the interconnectedness of military and political factors, enhancing their utility for defense planners and policymakers seeking to navigate the complexities of international relations in a crisis situation. 1. The Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis. 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis serves as a pivotal moment in the history of US-Soviet relations, highlighting the dangers of nuclear escalation and the importance of diplomacy. The crisis arose when the US discovered Soviet missiles in Cuba, leading to a tense standoff that brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. The strategic decisions made during this period, including the US naval blockade and negotiations with the Soviet Union, reflect the complexities of military engagement and political maneuvering in a high-stakes environment similar to the current assessments of US-China tensions over Taiwan. 2. World War I and the August 1914 crisis. The outbreak of World War I was marked by a complex web of alliances and escalating tensions among great powers, leading to a devastating conflict. The decisions made in the lead-up to the war exemplified the difficulties of managing political and military considerations as nations struggled to balance national interests, alliances, and the risk of war. The cascading failures of diplomacy and the reliance on military plans without adequate political foresight resonate with contemporary analyses of potential US-China conflicts and the importance of understanding the interplay between military actions and political implications. 3. The Vietnam War and the Tet Offensive. 1968. the Tet Offensive was a significant turning point in the Vietnam War that challenged U.S. military assumptions and strategies.
Launched by North Vietnamese forces during the Vietnamese New Year, the offensive caught U.S. and South Vietnamese troops off guard and shifted public opinion in the United States.
The disconnect between military successes and political realities highlighted the need for a nuanced understanding of conflict, emphasizing that military outcomes cannot be divorced from their political contexts. This historical case underscores the critical lessons for modern wargaming and strategic assessments concerning U.S.-China relations, particularly regarding the implications of military engagements and the necessity of political analysis.
Future outlook: predictions for U.S.-China relations in a hypothetical conflict.
As we look into the future of U.S.-China relations, particularly through the lens of a hypothetical conflict over Taiwan, several key predictions can be made based on current trends, historical context, and emerging geopolitical dynamics. 1. Increased military preparations and escalation of tensions. In the coming years, both the United States and China are likely to ramp up their military preparations, particularly concerning Taiwan. This build-up may involve the U.S. increasing its military presence in the Indo-Pacific region and enhancing defense cooperation with allies such as Japan, Australia, and India.
China, on the other hand, will continue to modernize its military capabilities, focusing on anti-access/area denial A2/AD strategies aimed at impeding U.S. intervention in the event of a conflict over Taiwan. 2. Complexity of multilateral alliances. A hypothetical conflict would not be limited to just the U.S., China, and Taiwan. The involvement of regional allies will play a crucial role. Countries like Japan and South Korea may be compelled to reassess their defense postures, potentially leading to stronger military cooperation with the U.S. In contrast, China's relationships with allies, especially Russia and North Korea, could become more pronounced as they seek to counterbalance U.S. influence. This multilateral dimension will complicate the conflict landscape and increase the potential for wider regional destabilization. 3. Cyber warfare and asymmetric strategies. Future conflicts will see an increased reliance on cyber warfare and asymmetric strategies. Both the U.S. and China are investing heavily in cyber capabilities, which will be critical in any military confrontation. Expect to see preemptive cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure, military communications, and economic systems. This new arena of warfare will blur the lines between military and civilian targets, raising ethical and legal concerns. 4. The risk of miscalculation and escalation. As tensions grow, the risk of miscalculation will increase. The fog of war, coupled with rapid decision-making under pressure, could lead to unintended escalations. Both powers will need to develop robust communication channels to manage crises effectively. However, given the adversarial nature of their relationship, the effectiveness of these channels remains uncertain. The potential for a misstep that could spiral into a larger conflict is a significant concern. 5. Impact of domestic politics. Domestic political considerations will heavily influence the actions of both the U.S. and China. In the U.S., public opinion and political pressure may push leaders to adopt a more aggressive stance toward China, particularly concerning Taiwan. Conversely, in China, nationalistic sentiments may compel the government to act decisively in reclaiming Taiwan, especially if they perceive a lack of resolve from the U.S. This interplay of domestic politics will shape strategic decisions and potentially exacerbate tensions. 6. Economic interdependence versus national security. Despite growing tensions, economic interdependence between the U.S. and China will continue to complicate the conflict landscape. Both nations are economically intertwined, and the costs of a military conflict would be catastrophic for both economies. Future predictions suggest that this reality may prompt both sides to seek alternative avenues for conflict resolution, such as diplomatic negotiations or economic sanctions, rather than outright military confrontation. 7. International norms and global governance. The international community's response to a US-China conflict over Taiwan will be crucial.
Global governance structures and international norms will be put to the test as nations grapple with the implications of a great power conflict. Expect increased discussions around the legitimacy of intervention, humanitarian concerns, and the responsibility to protect, which could influence the actions of both powers and their allies. 8. Evolving military technology and warfare. The future of warfare will be characterized by rapid technological advancements. Innovations such as artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, and advanced missile technologies will shape military strategies and capabilities. Both the US and China will need to adapt to these changes, which will redefine the nature of conflict. The focus may shift toward hybrid warfare, combining conventional military operations with cyber and information warfare. 9. Need for effective deterrence. To prevent conflict, both the US and China will need to establish credible deterrent strategies. This may involve a combination of military readiness, diplomatic engagements, and economic measures. The effectiveness of deterrence will depend on each nation's perception of threat and its willingness to escalate in response to perceived provocations. 10. Long-term strategic competition. Ultimately, US-China relations will continue to be characterized by long-term strategic competition. This competition will manifest in various arenas, including military, economic, technological, and ideological domains. While the potential for conflict over Taiwan remains a significant concern, the broader context of US-China rivalry will shape interactions and strategies for years to come. Conclusion. In summary, the future of US-China relations, especially regarding a potential conflict over Taiwan, is fraught with complexities and uncertainties. As both nations navigate this challenging landscape, the interplay of military preparedness, domestic politics, economic ties, and international norms will be critical in determining the trajectory of their relationship. The lessons learned from past conflicts and the evolving nature of warfare will also play pivotal roles in shaping strategies and outcomes in this high-stakes geopolitical rivalry.